Math 2, Unit 14. This is the last unit that is on your final. I think since it's the freshest stuff in your brain, that it should be the easiest part. Now, I want to highlight a few things that you should remember. When there's a probability close to 0, it means that the event is unlikely to happen. That is a true statement. So I'm going to put over here that is true. A probability close to 1 means the event is likely to happen. That is also a true statement. What you need to remember is that a probability can be from 0 to 1. It can't be any other number. If you have a coach who says, I want you to give 110%, that is not something that can actually happen. You cannot give more than what you can fully give. What they're really saying is they want 100%, not 110%. So a probability of 100 doesn't exist. That is a false statement for part D. I'll let you do some of those other ones. Then what they're going to do on number 2 is they're going to have a chart that is not completely filled out. You're going to have to do some addition and subtraction to figure out what goes in there. This plus this plus this should equal a total of 105. If you're working out that problem, you'll figure out that there are 39 second graders who like ice cream. If you see these 3 and you know it's a total, then the total of these people who like cake are 85. You can figure out that the number of students, if they are 50, subtract this, subtract that, you can find that this is 36. And I'm just going to fill in this chart. That way I can answer some of the questions below. But you figure out what goes there based off of the totals. And then we're going to answer several questions. The hardest part of this is knowing what the word and what the word or means. When you see the word and, it means both. What's the probability of liking cake and candy at the same time? These kids chose cake as their favorite. These kids chose candy as their favorite. What's the probability of them saying, I like candy and cake? Well, that's not here. There is no overlap. The probability of liking cake and candy is 0. These are mutually exclusive, meaning they cannot be in both groups at the same time. That wasn't a choice. They could only choose cake or they could choose candy. They say, what's your favorite? They couldn't choose both. They had to pick. There was no chance of them liking both. But the word or means together or combined. Liking ice cream or cake. Ice cream or cake. We can add these two numbers together. It's 105 plus 85 out of the grand total. There was how many in the grand total? There were 300. So by putting these two things together, you get 190 out of 300, which reduces to 19 over 30 for your answer for 2A. Always put your answer in lowest terms. The only time it's not out of the grand total is if you see a conditional probability, and this line means given or out of. This is a conditional probability. If you see this line, it means instead of talking about out of the 300, we are now talking about out of the third graders, and so sometimes you're going to have to ignore the first graders and the second graders, and you only care about the third graders. It's out of the 100 kids that are in third grade. If I'm covering that up, who likes popcorn? Out of the third graders, there are how many of the third graders that like popcorn? 12 out of the 100. Which reduces to 3 out of 25 for my final answer for that one. When I look at the I down here at the bottom, it says, what's the probability of being a third grader or candy? This is the only other one that's hard. Since it says combined, it's an or. There's overlap with this. When there's overlap, you have to be careful not to add something twice. For the third graders, here's third graders. There's 100 of them. Candy, there's 60 of them, but you're adding 14 twice because 14 is in the candy and the third graders. But it says or. So what you need to do is you need to figure out how I'm going to add up all the third graders. Let's say that there's 100. Plus what haven't we added for candy? We haven't added the 16 and the 30. The 16 and the 30. I don't want to add that 14 twice. So I'm not using that 60 at all. This is what we have. 100 plus 16 plus 30 out of the combined total. It comes out to 146 out of 300, which reduces to 73 out of 150. You have to pay attention to those little details like that. The last thing that I want to look at with you was on the back side of this worksheet. Sometimes there's going to be decimals, and sometimes they're going to tell you something is mutually exclusive. What that means is that there is a 25% chance that you're in this group. There's a 42% chance you're in this group, and that must mean, since that is a total of 0.67, that there is an additional 23% chance of being in something else, since it's mutually exclusive. 23? Does that work? No, 33. Thank you. Let me fix that. 90. That makes 100. Okay, so there's 33% chance of something else. When they ask you, what's the probability of being in both this group and this group when it's mutually exclusive? That's a trick question. You can't be in both. But what you can be is you can be in this or this, and that means together you would just add the 0.25 together plus the 0.42 to get to 0.67. If they say not R, well, there's a 25% you're in R. What does that mean if you're not in R? It's basically 1.0 minus the 0.25, which means there's a 75% or 0.75 chance that you're not in R. So I'm going to leave the rest for you to do.